What's poppin', guys? Welcome back to Sam Talk Sports. Let's talk about the top headline on ESPN. Shake up in Seattle. Seahawks fire DC Norton. And I'm just going to start off by saying I've been a loyal Seattle Seahawks fan for over a decade, since the Matt Hasselbeck days. And this decision, as a Seahawks fan, I completely understand. I thought Ken Norton Jr. did an alright job with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks obviously had a disappointing season this year. And the defense was kind of shaky all season long. They improved towards the latter part of the season, but I noticed a trend with the Seahawks, which, head coach Carroll mentioned. The Seahawks defense notoriously struggled in the early periods, the early games each season for the Seahawks when Ken Norton was the DC for the team. You could see Carroll saying that defensively we didn't start fast enough in this season again. That's 2 times in a row we didn't start fast enough. And I would agree. I felt like the Seahawks defense became better slowly as the season progressed, but in the NFL with only 16, now 17 games, teams simply can't afford struggling early on in defense and expecting to still be competitive. I know last year was an anomaly. The Seahawks finished 12-4, but I felt like the change was necessary for the Seahawks, for their defensive coach. A new defensive coach with a new philosophy might benefit this team quite well. You can see further on this article, it mentions that the 2020 team allowed the most passing yards through 9 games in league history. That's wild that the Seahawks were still able to finish 12-4 last season. So, steering a bit off topic, I got no, concerns with the Seahawks. Yeah, they had a losing season this year, 7-10. I'll show you guys the standings for the Seahawks. 7-10. Yet they had a positive 29-point differential. So I see the Seahawks returning to the playoffs next season, and I also do see Carroll and Wilson deciding to, run it back for at least one more season, see how it goes. But the defensive position, especially for the coach, is something that needs to be addressed, and I like this change. I'm very curious as to whether, right here in the article it mentions, is Carroll gonna hire one of his pass assistants for his defense, or a new coach, maybe that Carroll isn't familiar with. And I think this is a great question because I felt like Carroll and his assistant coaches, usually he likes familiarity, but is this the year to kind of switch it up? Because I feel like ever since the LOB, the Seahawks defense has lost its identity. But if you look at the roster for the Seahawks, their defensive roster, I think there's many quality players on there. Jamal Adams is elite, but he didn't have that great of a year this year. I felt like individually, you can pick out many players on the Seahawks defense that had solid years, but they weren't a cohesive unit for some reason. And you can see in the first season of Norton, interestingly, in points allowed, 11th, 22nd, 15th, and 11th in points, which is above average in the league, while their yards allowed kind of progressively became worse, 16th, 26th, 22nd, and 28th. And even the 2021 Seahawks finished 25th in takeaways and tied for 22 in sacks. And with so many quality players on the team, I felt like this was somewhat inexcusable. So I support this decision. And if you look at the roster of the Seahawks, I just want to highlight, the stats of the Seahawks. I just want to highlight great players like Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner has been a staple in the Seahawks defense. He is just fantastic. No complaints whatsoever. They were great individual players. Quandre Diggs, I hope he recovers well. His leg injury, that was tough to see on live television. But Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, DJ Reed, even pickups like Carlos Dunlap has been great. They all had solid individual seasons, but I want to see them improve upon their individual efforts and kind of mesh into a cohesive group, which I think a defensive coordinator will help them do just that, but they need to find the right one. Sorry guys, my camera battery died, but continuing on, you can see the Seahawks defense over the years, ever since the LB era. Man, I miss that era. Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman. That was such a vibe, when the Seahawks had like historically amazing defenses. Look at those opponent point per game scores, numbers: 15.3, 14.4, 15.9. And I'm never going to talk about that Super Bowl play on the 1 yard line. I still see that on the internet every single day. So I'll leave that for a future video, a future rant. But as you can see, in the 4 seasons with Ken Norton Jr. as the DC, the defensive numbers for the Seahawks haven't been great, but I believe in their defensive roster. I think they have enough talent. They just need to mesh together, which, like I said before, is easier said than done. But if you look at the Seahawks from 2012 onwards, they pretty much nearly had double-digit wins every single year besides 2017. So in 2022, I expect the Seahawks to have a much improved defense. Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll, I think they're going to give it another go. I believe they'll restructure Bobby Wagner's contract and he'll return. I believe Kanye Diggs will also return with a solid salary. And overall, as a Seahawks fan, one more point I would like to mention before we end off the video is, even though it seems like the total points per game for the Seahawks this season in terms of defense is pretty solid, they were 12th in the league with 21.5 points allowed, but in terms of the yards, they allowed, let me switch that over, they were, hold up, okay, they went down, they were a bottom 5 defense in the league in terms of yards allowed, and this is problematic for the team. I think this was a downfall for the Seahawks this season, because if you look at one of the biggest issues of the Seahawks this season was their possession time. Look at that difference in terms of offensive position and defensive position. The defense had to be out on the field 35 minutes every single game, yet the offense only had 25 minutes. And this discrepancy really tired out the Seahawks defense, and it didn't really allow them enough time to rest. So I want the next DC to focus more on avoiding yards, so the offense can't get the ball back. And let's flip this number around. Let the offense have 35 minutes each game, and the defense only need to be on the field for 25 minutes, and the Seahawks will be good to go. Alright, that's the end of this breakdown. Go Seahawks, the 12th man, let's go. Next season is going to be a great season for the Seahawks fans, so don't worry. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching this breakdown, and I'll catch you in the next one. And don't forget to live a spicy life. Peace.